Charlie Kirk in his fight for free speech tonight at Auburn.
We love Charlie. He was an amazing person. He has a profound impact on this country. And tonight's going to be an amazing event at Auburn.
So Piers Morgan, host of Piers Morgan Uncensored, and author of a brand new book called Woke is Dead that we shall cover in a second. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, bud.
Jesse's got a big interview tonight, airing prime time, and I haven't seen all of it. I've seen some clips, but I've talked to some people who have, and this is really touching and moving stuff, and it's the first time she's talked about it. This is the moment that Erica went to the hospital to see her husband for the final time.
You wanted to see Charlie immediately and came up. Take us through that.
When we walked into that room, he had this smirk on his face. That smirk to me is that look of, you thought you could stop what I've built. You thought that you could end this vision, this movement, this revival. You thought you could do that by murdering me. You got my body. You didn't get my soul.
That's powerful.
Very moving.
So we're going to watch that tonight.
You know, Erica Kirk is, well, she's just a remarkable woman. I mean, I didn't know much about Erica. I'd interviewed Charlie a few times. And, you know, it's interesting. I wrote this book really as an advisory to liberals, right? You've got to rethink this woke ideology, particularly about free speech. You've got to stop thinking that if you hear an opinion you don't like, the only response is to shame, to vilify, to cancel, and in Charlie Kirk's case, to actually murder somebody because you don't like their opinions. And the hideous irony of Charlie Kirk is that he spent all his time going to university campuses up and down America, sitting there with thousands of students who didn't agree with him and said, come and prove me wrong, let's have a debate. He did it with courtesy, with respect. He allowed them to have their say. He argued. He came to the Oxford Union in the UK and did it back in May. And so he was like the standard bearer for what free speech actually is. You know, as Winston Churchill said, it's not about being able to listen to opinions you agree with. We can all do that. It's about being able to tolerate opinions that you don't like. But, you know, even hate speech, actually, if it doesn't pass the bar of criminality, if it's not an incitement to violence, actually what free speech means sometimes is listening to people saying hateful things and tolerating it and accepting it's their right to think that and to say that. We have lost that, and it's been driven by the woke left. And Charlie Kirk's assassination was at the hands of a deranged young person who genuinely had obviously convinced himself that the only way to shut up Charlie Kirk was not through the power of debate, but through the power of a bullet. But he did not, I think, factor in Erica Kirk, who has become this extraordinary standard bearer for the torch of Charlie Kirk. And it's been, I think, quite remarkable to watch.
And not just growing.
I think she's one of the most interesting people in America right now to watch. Go ahead, Dana. Sorry.
That's okay. I've echoed the same, but I would say that the growth of Turning Point USA since the assassination is remarkable in the United States, but also in the UK.
Yes, and it is really about free speech. There was a fascinating thing. I mentioned the Oxford Union. Charlie was there back in April, May this year, and he debated with somebody who then wanted to become president of the Oxford Union, which is the most probably prestigious debating society in the world. Every world leader's been there. He stood opposite Charlie Kirk in that chamber with the students debating him. And then what happened? The moment Charlie Kirk got shot, this guy went public with LOL was his first response. And his second response was, Charlie Kirk just got shot, let's effing go, with exclamation marks. He was jubilant that this man who he debated with in a debating society had been shot because of his speech. And luckily, the students at the University of Oxford have rallied against him now, but there are still some that support him. And the gleeful way that so many on the woke left celebrated Charlie Kirk's death is another thing I talk about in the book. It is despicable, the idea that you would celebrate the death of a young husband and father who simply for the crime of expressing his honestly held opinions, but always wanting to debate it.
Woke is Dead is the book,
Yes.
and we're glad to have you here stateside.
Good to be here. Woke is dead, and it's not actually dead yet, so I do need everybody's help in finally
It's an
killing off-
aspirational title.
I want to find the antidote to the woke mind virus. We can do this together, people.
Tis a mere flesh wound.
Yes. Well, you know what? I actually think the ideology's dead, but a lot of people haven't got the memo yet on the left, and they will never, I don't think, be properly electable again until they go back to understanding what being a liberal is actually about.
Got it. Good luck.
Here's Morgan. Thank you so
guys.
much.
I want to play some sound because this is the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, before the voting began today, talking about the reason that they're doing this. Watch.
First of all, we're not throwing out the independent redistricting. We're affirming national independent redistricting. We're maintaining our current independent redistricting for statewide races. But in response to what happened in Texas, temporarily changing the maps for 3 cycles for the congressional races. It reverts then back to its original form.
As soon as he says we're not throwing out the independent redistricting, you had chuckles around the table, Katie Zachariah, because clearly, what do you think?
Well, that's all it did. It actually threw out the Independent Redistricting Commission entirely. And I love when they say this. We are going, and it'll come back. Once you've taken power, you are not giving power back to the people. That is time and time again, and it is an age-old truth. And he upended the Independent Redistricting Commission, and he did exactly what they wanted to do, and he took legislative authority, and he did partisan gerrymandering. These are all in violation of our state constitution, and he sits there so comfortably and he lies out his teeth. Texas redistricted because the Biden DOJ sued them on their 2020 census. This was not a partisan gerrymandering. They had to redistrict, and they did it within their constitutional authority. Gavin Newsom has usurped this, and he has done a mid-cycle redistricting outside of the Constitution trace. It is so sad to see an uncomfortable liar lie and lie again.
Let's bring in Wall Street Journal editorial board member Monet Ukwe-Barua. Monet, it was decision day yesterday. Decisions were made. And this morning, the New York Post puts it this way. They say, on your marks, M-A-R-X, get set, zo. Mamdani wins race for mayor, the red apple. So now that he's won, what does this mean, and will there be a ripple effect?
Well, I think the ripple effect is already taking place throughout the entire Democratic Party. People were watching Mamdani's candidacy in New York to see, is a candidate this far to the left really viable? Can they get a broad base of support? Now, New York City isn't like the rest of America, that's for sure. It's a much more liberal place. But I think that there's already a lot of donors thinking we can run Mamdani copycats, people who are really, really clever with social media, people who are going to promise free benefits to voters. And that's the playbook that they're going to have going into the midterm elections in 2026.
Okay, but that said, will it work outside of New York City?
I don't think so. I frankly think that you're going to see a lot of people watching closely what Mamdani does, trying to implement things like free buses. We know that's going to create a lot of chaos and homelessness, watching things like free grocery stores. And around the country, they're going to be seeing these results playing out poorly in New York City and saying, we don't want to replicate that all around the country. So I think Democrats might be preparing to run a playbook in the midterms that's not exactly going to pay off for them.
Okay, so during his speech last night, you heard it. Mamdani went directly after President Trump. I know you're watching. 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. And then on Truth Social, President Trump responded also with 4 words, writing, and so it begins. So what will the Mamdani-President Trump dynamic be? And do you think that the president should intervene in New York City by withholding federal funds, which is something that he has said he will do?
Well, I think that there's going to be a lot of tit for tat. We are just seeing the beginning of it. These two are going to be sniping at each other, and it's going to be covered far and wide. In terms of what President Trump tries to do with New York City, I think it depends on what Mamdani's approach actually is. Things like sanctuary city policies, saying we're not going to cooperate with federal law enforcement on deporting illegal immigrants. That's something that the federal government really does have an interest in. And so President Trump would be well within his rights to say, we're not going to give you all this aid that's potentially going to go to pay for illegal migrants if you are going to completely stonewall us from keeping the residents of New York City safe and deporting people who aren't supposed to be in this country.
Looking ahead to 1 year from today, or from yesterday, the 2026 elections. You mentioned in your first answer that there's going to be a year year to find out what Zohran Mamdani does to this city. And then the voters throughout the country can extrapolate from that whether they want that in their communities. So 2 questions for you. What do you think that specifically means for the midterms in terms of who takes over the House or who maintains the House in the Republican sense? And Governor of New York, because Elise Stefanik probably going to run. If it's not like a guarantee, it's a fait accompli at this point. Does she say, look what Zohran Mamdani did to New York City. Do you want that spread throughout the great state of New York? If not, vote for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. The winds are clearly blowing strongly in the Democrats' direction here. Mamdani wasn't the only winner on Election Day. You also saw New Jersey and Virginia. They won those governorships. There's a lot of disappointment with how Trump has performed in some of these states. And so Democrats are in a strong position going into midterms to potentially reclaim the House of Representatives, especially. But I do think Mamdani is going to help give Republicans their best possible shots, because they'll be able to point to a very extreme Democrat in America's biggest city and say, this is the direction that Democrats want to take the entire country. Elise Stefanik in New York running for governor is going to specifically be pointing to Mamdani, the effect that his governor or that his candidacy has on crime and things like that in New York City, and going to be making that pitch to say we need to go in a different direction here in New York State.
Yeah, it was a good night for Democrats, but now that Mamdani has won, the whole party is going to have to answer for socialism, and we'll see how that goes over the course of the next year. Now that the election has passed, we're officially in midterm election cycle. Can you believe it? The time has come.
It just goes on.
It is now. Wall Street Journal editorial board member Monet Ukwe-Barua, we thank you so much for joining us.
The Democrat radicals in the Senate have shown zero interest in reopening the government, and I don't think they'll act so soon. A lot of people disagree. I think they're kamikaze pilots. I just got back from Japan. I talked about the kamikaze pilots. I think these guys are kamikaze. They'll take down the country if they have to.
All right, President Trump focused on ending the government shutdown. Democrats show no signs of backing down. And Kayleigh McEnany, she is host of a Saturday in America and co-host of Outnumbered. She joins us now. Let's listen to Chuck Schumer. He's got a different point of view. Watch.
I believe that President Trump needs to get involved. Do you need him in the room to make a deal?
We've been asking for months for Trump to get involved, and he hasn't been. And the fault of this shutdown falls on his shoulders. He's refused to discuss anything with us.
How do you see this today? Now that day 36, we're in record territory.
Yeah, we are in record territory. Again, this falls at the feet of Democrats who would not pass the clean CR. And when I look at just some of the mixed messaging I'm seeing in the reporting, in Politico, Senate Democrats apparently have no consensus yet on whether they are going to end this. Chuck Schumer yesterday to reporters said they're not yet ready to surrender. Does the election change the calculus? Well, once again in Politico, Democrats, they say, are waking up saying, are we really going to cave now? So this is laid at the foot of Democrats, and it's getting very serious when aviation security could be compromised. You have military families going on 6 weeks without pay. Imagine 6 weeks without pay, not being able to pay your bills. It's serious. And when Donald Trump talks about ending the filibuster, I know it's not a popular position among Senate Republicans, but he does have a point. He and J.D. Vance, when J.D. Vance said in that Turning Point USA interaction last week, we can't not do things because we're afraid the left's going to do them. The left will always do them. That's the lesson of the last 40 years. And I agree with President Trump. They will end the filibuster when power changes.
Would you encourage them to do that in this circumstance?
I think when you get to a point where we're talking about aviation security, 6 weeks, and an inability to pass a clean CR from Democrats and not getting paid, it's getting to a point where it's serious enough to talk about that.
Kayleigh, the one thing that I see as well is that this is a nonpartisan issue when it comes to the military, but also to travel. So Sean Duffy has been trying to warn people, and it's getting close to Thanksgiving. People are getting worried about what could happen. Watch him here.
None of us can manage missing 2 paychecks. So if you bring us to a week from today, Democrats, you will see mass chaos, you will see mass flight delays, you'll see mass cancellations, and you may see us close certain parts of the airspace because we just cannot manage it because we don't have the air traffic controllers.
These are people that are on business travel for the most part, or maybe they're going on vacation, but a lot of people are business travel. They're trying to get home. They want to get to the Little League game. They want to get to back to school night. They want to be there for their kids, and they're not going to be able to get there.
That's right. And closing airspace, I mean, I love that Duffy is making security the priority. That's what it should be. We're less than a year out from a plane crash that happened as a plane was going into DCA. We have seen so many close calls, planes colliding on runways, all kinds of things. We cannot risk this. And it gets to a point where when you have so many folks calling